Well, I'm absolutely delighted now to be joined by the incoming President-Elect of the AAA, Dr. Alisse Waterston. Dr. Waterston, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you.
So we're talking about open anthropology this morning. What is open anthropology?
Open anthropology is a new pilot project of the AAA, of the American Anthropological Association. It is an online journal that is designed to open up anthropology to the larger reading public in various different ways. So we've discovered in our field, we've been talking about for many, many years, that there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation about anthropology, what it is, who anthropologists are and what they do. And so we know as anthropologists that anthropologists produce amazing knowledge, amazing insight, wonderful information, and that we often get stuck talking just to each other and not to other people, not to the larger public. And we know we have a lot to say that the larger public would be interested in knowing about, especially on critical social issues of our times. So open anthropology was designed in part to bring anthropology into the public conversation about critical social issues of our times. The way it's done is that AAA produces over 24 publications, and the first one started in 1888. So there's an enormous archive of material in the Anthropological journal archives. So open anthropology takes this whole body, this whole archive, the stacks, so to speak, of anthropological knowledge, and with each issue of open anthropology, these stacks are curated into individual issues on a particular topic. This new initiative launched in April, just this past April 2013. On the topic of marriage and other arrangements. And of course, anthropologists have a lot to say about marriage from a lot of different perspectives, historical, cross-cultural, etc., and family relations and kinship. So the first issue of Open Anthropology on marriage and other arrangements takes 12 articles across the various journals, from American Anthropologist to American Ethnologist to Transforming Anthropology, many of the journals, and curates them into this wonderful edition. Each issue of Open Anthropology has one piece of new content, which is an editorial by the editor, and I'm the editor of Open Anthropology. And what I try to do in the editorial is to make anthropological knowledge more accessible to this reading public by translating some of the more technical language or ideas that are in the articles and synthesizing the theme so that that reader can have a guide to the literature.
It sounds great, and obviously these are issues that really important to folks out there, and,
yes.
And as you say, it's knowledge and a perspective that people would find very helpful. But how do you kind of bridge that gap, if you like? How do you reach out to people who might not really understand an anthropologist or an anthropologist's role in all this?
Well, this is a great question because, as I mentioned, one way we try to do it with Open Anthropology is through that editorial. So that is to make it more comprehensible. But there is a larger challenge for anthropologists in general, which is that we need to start to write in more accessible, if we imagine our audience is the larger public, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes we want to produce knowledge for a more narrow audience, and that's perfectly legitimate. But at the same time, part of the mission of the AAA is to help address these critical issues that humankind is facing and to help solve human problems. And so I think that part of it is that it is the responsibility of the anthropologist to try to translate their own complicated work and information and understandings in writing and in other ways. In terms of open anthropology, we actually have a challenge, which is who is this larger public that we think might be interested in our material, and we don't really know who they are. We're not exactly sure how to find out who they are either. We do spread the word about open anthropology through social media, Twitter and the AAA blog and other press releases. The second issue, by the way, just came out in October, and it's on violence, another critical issue of our times. We do know that because this is an online-only journal, it's not a print journal, it's online only, we've had almost 6,500 unique visitors from all across the world visiting, reading open anthropology. So we're thrilled about that.
That's fantastic. Now, let me finish off.
Yes.
You have a book out as well.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I will tell you briefly about my book, which, by the way, I do take up the challenge of making anthropological knowledge more accessible through writing in this book. The book is called My Father's Wars: Migration, Memory, and the Violence of a Century, and it's published by Routledge in their series on innovative ethnographies. And this is an innovative ethnography on many levels. One is that this is a study, a project I did with my own father, which is very unusual thing for an anthropologist to do. My colleague Barbara Rilko-Bauer and I developed a term to describe the approach we've taken in our respective projects called intimate ethnography. So my project is an intimate ethnography. I start with my father's life. He lived across the entire 20th century, which was a very violent century, as we know. He started out as an Eastern European Jew who found his way to Cuba, and beyond that, he crossed cultures, continents, generations, language groups. So what I do in this book is tell a very compelling, interesting story. My father happened to have an interesting story, to bring the reader into this portrait and then edge out from there to talk about to contextualize his life history. So it's a social history, and it's a meditation on violence. And I'll say one last thing about the book. It's innovative in that it has 100 hyperlinks taking the reader to the internet where the reader can have a multi-dimensional, rich reading experience with music, audio interviews, video interviews that I've conducted, my return trips to both Poland and Cuba on video, documents, photographs, and music. So it is a way to, this book is another way to try to bring anthropological knowledge and information into the public view.
Well, thank you very much indeed for sharing all that with us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure.